President Trump's second summit with the North Korean dictator ends without a deal. Legalized sports betting measures move forward, and a different approach to get tough on abortion emerges in Iowa. All things we'll talk about this morning with former Rock Island County Democratic Party Chair Doug House and former Iowa State Representative David Millage, a Republican, and newly elected Scott County Republican Party Chair. Congratulations, by the way. And welcome again both to you to the program.
Good to be with you.
We'll begin with new abortion-related measures in Iowa. There are four. Republicans introduced a bill that would declare that life begins at conception. This is the fundamental argument in this debate. Another proposal is a constitutional amendment that would state there is no right to abortion in Iowa's constitution. The strategy is to weaken the state's court system's ability to review limits on abortion. A third would increase the punishment to life in prison for anyone convicted of intentionally ending a pregnancy. A fourth would prevent the state from using federal money for sex education programs run by organizations that perform abortions. Now, we saw Republicans give up the legal fight over the fetal heartbeat law. How effective can this strategy be, and what's the likelihood that these won't clear the courts either, David? There's a lot to hear, obviously.
They will clear the courts of Iowa when you have a constitutional amendment. It's hard for the Supreme Court to say, well, that constitutional amendment's unconstitutional. So I think the constitutional amendment is the right way to go to avoid the court interfering with the legislature's decision on this measure, on the abortion issue.
Is it likely to pass as a constitutional amendment? That's a pretty tough hurdle.
Well, no, it wouldn't have been a tough hurdle if they had started it 2 years ago, but they have to pass two consecutive legislatures, meaning two differently elected legislatures, and Republicans had control 2 years ago, and they have control now. They can pass it, and then it has to pass the next go-around, though. So and they have to make sure the Secretary of State certifies it right.
So you think it's a good strategy the Republicans are taking compared to what they've done in the past?
Yes, I think it's a foolproof strategy if they have control 2 years from now.
Doug House.
The governor just had a new appointment to the Supreme Court in Iowa, and there's been new appointments on the Supreme Court in Washington, and so everyone's wanting to test that, see what that means, and the method that they're going about. It's a new one. These laws are being pushed up against the boundaries for test case. So
other states are doing it too?
Absolutely.
So it could obviously get through the state, but then ultimately we would expect something to go all the way up to the United States Supreme Court on something like this if it gets this far.
Well, I don't think a constitutional amendment would, because that's state law.
Sure.
And you can't violate federal law.
But there's other issues. There's four issues here, so.
Right.
But that would one thing you think could be a foolproof way to get through. Well, let's move on to legalized sports betting. It has a lot of state governments busy this session. Iowa has 10 study bills on the issue. Two similar proposals seem to have the best chance. They would legalize traditional sports betting and daily fantasy sports. It would authorize the activity for the state's casinos, horse racing tracks, and other facilities. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker is backing a proposal in his state he says would generate $217 million in licenses and tax revenues. Illinois would issue 20 licenses at a cost of $10 million each. In-person and mobile wagering would be allowed in Illinois as well. There are a lot of competing interests on this issue. The eventual details could get complicated and perhaps doom the proposals. But let's say they pass. What kind of impact can there be among states, I guess, that adopt significantly different laws on this issue? Is it important to have more uniformity among the states, Doug?
Yeah, I think uniformity would be important. Right now it's a race to get in the game and who's going to get there first and try and develop the market to do it and do it even through the internet and other means as well. But the debate point on it right now in Illinois, and it is going to pass, I believe, in Illinois, is strictly whether or not it'll be brick and mortar facilities and those types of situations around the state. But generating $217 million of revenue, governor's already placed it into his budget, so he fully well expects to pass it.
They're talking about that $10 million fee. That's quite a chunk of change as well for those licenses. Well, the uniformity is that.
I disagree. I don't think there needs to be uniformity.
Okay.
Let the states compete among themselves by developing unique methods to deliver this particular product to the consumer. I mean, it's obvious that the people want it. They're doing it now, and so it's something that needs to be regulated. But let each state do what they deem best.
And states would ultimately have to adjust based on the marketplace too,
right,
to see
exactly.
what works and what doesn't. Are you confident both states are going to get there, David, on this?
Well, I defer to Doug's judgment in Illinois.
In Illinois, but yeah.
I think it's up in the air in Iowa.
Really? Closer call?
Yeah.
Well, President Trump's former lawyer testified before the House Oversight Committee this week. Michael Cohen did not have good things to say about his former boss. Cohen himself has already been convicted of lying to Congress. He essentially accused the president of committing 5 felonies when he testified before Congress. One comment he made late might have been missed by a lot of people. Cohen said that if the president loses the 2020 election, he doesn't think there would be a peaceful transition of power. I guess, how concerned should Americans be after Cohen's testimony, Doug House?
It's difficult to place yourself between two liars. The president, his credibility isn't real high, and his attorney, Cohen's, isn't either. They're both in difficult spots. It's like two skunks fighting. And so the hearing that's being taken place, there are a lot of names and a lot of new evidence coming forward that they're going to have to sort through or try and figure out. I'm glad that they have to do it, and I feel sorry for anyone that feels that they have to watch it.
David?
What's the question?
Well, how concerned should Americans be about after listening to Cohen's testimony?
Not at all.
Why is that?
Cohen didn't pin any kind of an impeachable offense upon Trump. What he said about Trump has been said about Trump before. There's nothing new there. It's not an impeachable offense to be not a nice person. So, excuse me, I'm really...
That's fine. You're fine, David. We understand.
I don't think there was anything new in his testimony. He exonerated him on Russian collusion, so...
We know that this, I guess, discussion isn't going to end just with Michael Cohen. They're going to bring more people potentially based on his testimony. I guess, how much longer can this go on, and how resilient can the president be?
I think the president's shown he's quite resilient. How long can it go on? For another 2 years. As long as the Democrats have control of at least one house of Congress, they're going to continue investigating.
Doug?
The most dangerous time in all of this is still ahead of us. As these facts are ferreted out and more truth comes to light, more and more indictments, prosecutions, and guilty findings, the president will become more desperate. Whenever his situation has become tenuous or difficult, he really lashes out. And so people should be concerned about it.
We have one more topic to get to. It's Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un the second time around. It ended without a deal to denuclearize North Korea. Democratic leadership, like Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, supported the president for walking away and not lifting sanctions. There are some who say, though, it was a no-lose situation for Kim Jong-un. Simply being on the same stage as an American president is a win. What can the United States, though, do to apply more pressure on North Korea, or is the country out of options to try to denuclearize and limit the threat from North Korea?
Well, no, we're not out of options. We can ratchet up our sanctions. And let me remind you, everybody said that the Gorbachev-Reagan summit in Reykjavik in 1988 was a failure because they didn't come to an agreement. But 3 years later, the Soviet Union dissolved and the Berlin Wall came down as a direct result of Reagan walking away from the table at those talks.
So we don't know, obviously we don't know, but what you see, do you see the likelihood of ratcheting up sanctions? Do you think that's the right approach to take with North Korea?
Yes and yes.
Okay. Doug?
I think it's good that he did walk away from this summit. We didn't give up anything. I think it's unfortunate the way that the dialogue takes place during these summits that he's had, that he ends up complimenting people who have long been our adversaries and treats our allies with disrespect, and that's concerning. And this is a very tenuous situation that we're interjected into here. And he's now started talking about another nuclear summit between India and Pakistan. And he's destabilizing the world stage, and that's a scary proposition.
Do you think we need to engage more of our allies also to help put up the pressure on North Korea, or is just our sanctions alone enough?
Oh, no. We need to get our allies to go along with us. We need to isolate North Korea and make them hurt.
Do you think is it going to be effective in terms of what we're seeing, him being able to reach out to other governments now because we've given him some credibility on a world stage?
I don't think that is going to affect our allies. I mean, it's out there. They've known that he's had a summit with them, but they need to come along if they want to denuclearize that peninsula.
All right, guys, thanks so much. David Millage, Doug House, thanks so much for the conversation. That brings us to our question of the week. What do you think about legalizing sports betting in Iowa and Illinois? Send your answer by email to fortherecord@whbf.com or respond to this post on Facebook, at the Local 4 News WHBF TV page, or on my page.